Greetings, comrades. Imagine you need to buy your own place. You find a great option in the center of the capital. The apartment is gorgeous, the owner is ready to sell quickly, and she's even willing to give you a discount. As a pleasant bonus, you learn that the owner is your mother's and grandmother's idol, a national celebrity, a people's artist of Russia, and one of the two biggest pop stars of the last 40 years. How cool is that? You pay for the apartment, sign the contract, and give the star a month to move out. After all, she's a famous person, she won't disappear with your money. But when you show up to get the keys, this people's artist refuses to let you in. What a twist, right? Well, fine, you have a contract, so you go to court. But the court decides that you lose the apartment. Why? Because the seller was acting under the influence of scammers. Oh, and you also lose the money because the seller gave it to the scammers. And then two higher courts confirm this. They tell you, go get your money back from the criminals who tricked the distinguished people's artist. Since the scammers weren't caught and the money wasn't found, well, sorry. How is this possible? Who deceived Larisa Dolina? And how did she inspire hundreds of elderly copycats? Let's take a look at one of the wildest stories of 2025. So, our cast of characters. There are more than two. Larisa Dolina, Polina Lurier, the buyer, the scammers, Larisa's cult of followers, and of course the Russian court, which until recently made completely inexplicable decisions in this case. Let's start with Larisa Dolina. She's essentially the Russian Cher. A jazz and pop icon since the 1970s, she has been showered with awards, sold out huge concert halls, and is the member of the pro-Putin United Russia Party. She even performed with the president himself. Yet in the summer of 2024, this powerful woman fell prey to a phone scam. What happened? She received a call from people who identified themselves as FSB and Rosfin monitoring agents. They told her some terrible news. Criminals are targeting your accounts to fund terrorism. You must help us catch them. They had their sights set on the singer's luxury apartment in Khamovniki, one of Moscow's most expensive districts. But don't be alarmed, dear Larisa Alexandrovna. We, the law enforcement officers, will be able to put a stop to this insidious scheme. We just need your help, so please play along with us. We need you to do a fake sale to trap the criminals. Don't worry, the sale is fictitious. Once we catch them, you get your place back. Larisa Dolina agrees and puts her apartment up for sale. The market value of Dolina's 236 square meter apartment is about 135 million rubles, but she is ready to sell for less. Enter the buyer, Polina Lurier, a 34-year-old single mother who is offering 112 million rubles. FSB officers are pressuring Dolina to accept the offer because there are no other buyers. Dolina agrees but demands cash, as requested by the FSB. The parties conclude the deal. Dolina takes the cash plus another 60 million rubles of her own savings and hands it all to a courier to put in a safe account. Hooray! Her money is safe. Dolina waits a week, then 2, then 3 for further instructions, but the FSB never calls back. Meanwhile, the buyer calls, first asking and then demanding the keys to the apartment. Dolina finally realizes that the FSB agents who she even video called with were deepfakes and scammers. She could have guessed earlier though. After all, the scammers showed the singer their FSB IDs, which looked like this. Any familiar faces? In any case, Dolina realized that she had been fooled, refuses to leave the apartment, and accuses Lurier of failing to exercise due diligence when finalizing the deal. She sues Polina, claiming she should have known the price was too low and that Dolina was acting weird. Lurier files a counterclaim demanding to be allowed into her apartment, and the first courts ruled in Dolina's favor. They gave the house back to the celebrity because she had been under the influence of third parties. However, the court also exempted her from the obligation to return the money to the buyer at all, since Lurier was capable of suing the scammers for compensation herself. Luria was naturally outraged and decided to appeal the Khamovnichi court's decision. However, first the Moscow City Court and then the Second Court of Cassation also ruled in favor of Dolina. So, Polina Luria was left with no apartment and no money. How is this even possible? You bought an apartment, signed the contract and transferred the money for it. But you lose both because between receiving the money and handing over the keys, the seller gave it all to the scammers. What kind of nonsense is this? Perhaps the buyer was part of this cunning scheme, an accomplice of the scammers. I confess that when I first heard this story a year ago, I was sure the buyer was in on it. Where does a single mom get $1.4 million in cash? Something was fishy. Especially since Polina Luria flatly refused to talk to the media and made all her statements through lawyers. But a year later it turned out Polina is the daughter of a top IT executive. The money was clean. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now let's move on to the third party, the scammers. Who are these geniuses? Honestly, this scheme is so common in Russia, I am surprised anyone still falls for it. In Russia, everyone knows that one day you will receive a message or a call from a colleague, boss, brother, son, or local police officer. There are countless options. They will tell you that you and your money are in danger and that you need to do something quickly. You will be bounced from one conversation to another, from your boss to the organization's supervisor, from the supervisor to an FSB employee and finally to a bank employee. If necessary, even Vladimir Putin will talk to you. The bottom line is always the same. You need to hide all your money in a safe account. If you don't have money, take out a loan. If 2 banks offer you a loan, take it from both. 10 banks, even better. Collect all the money you can and give it to the couriers. Now you are safe. I understand it sounds stupid, but thousands of people in Russia have fallen victim to this scam, from small children to renowned scientists. It's just not always millions of dollars. Sometimes scammers don't even want money. Sometimes they blackmail you and force you to burn down a police station or a military registration office or even stage some kind of public attack. But who are these scammers? It's an open secret that in one neighboring country there are A. many people who speak Russian, B. many people who earn their living in scam call centers and are extremely motivated to target Russian citizens specifically, and C. law enforcement agencies that are happy to turn a blind eye to the work of these centers if the victims are Russian citizens. This industry doesn't even try to hide. There are thousands of accounts on TikTok openly advertising jobs at call centers. I don't think anyone would really justify people who are willing to first drive a random 70-year-old woman into huge debt and then send her, for example, to set fire to a relay cabinet, for which she will be sentenced to up to 10 years in prison. They are obviously the bad guys there, but you know perfectly well why they are not punished by their country. Now let's move on to the fourth character, the courts. How could they make such a decision? They used Article 178 of the Civil Code, invalidity of a deal made under the impact of delusion. The courts ruled that Dolina had acted under a significant misunderstanding of its nature when concluding the deal. This meant the deal had to be terminated. But since the money is with the scammers who are likely abroad, Luria has to get the money back herself. People were furious. They rightly believed that if not for Dolina's status, her title of People's Artist and her songs with the president, the court would never sided with her in this crazy case. Okay, the deal can be cancelled, but why would the buyer suffer? How could you invalidate a transaction without the parties returning to their original positions? The seller with the apartment and the buyer with the money. Furthermore, as I mentioned earlier, thousands of Russians have fallen victim to scammers in recent years, losing all their money. Many were forced to sell their apartments. Can you guess how many of them got their apartments back through the courts? That's right, none. And what about those who, at the behest of the scammers, went on to commit crimes? They were also under influence and manipulated, but no one is absolving these citizens of responsibility. They are in prison. What's even more interesting is when Dolina case became public, a phenomenon occurred called the Dolina Effect. She gained followers. An elderly woman puts her apartment up for sale, says she's moving in with her granddaughter. The happy buyers take out a mortgage. But then the grandma claims that she was influenced by scammers and transferred the money to them. She goes to court and wins. The apartment is returned to her, leaving the buyers without housing or money, and sometimes with a lingering mortgage. Of course, formally the grandma still owes them money, but since she gave the cash to the scammers, she can only pay like $30 a month from her pension, right? According to data released in December 2025, more than 3,000 families were affected by cancelled deals involving pensioners. One such seller even told the buyers outright they gave the apartment back to Dolina, so they will return mine to me too. Outraged by what was happening, people began a campaign to cancel Dolina. She received thousands of angry comments, her performances were cancelled, she was removed from event posters, and some of her colleagues condemned her. Dolina was also called out for her past scandals, such as her rudeness during interviews, her conflicts with younger colleagues, and her arrogance. Throughout this time, she did not comment on the events at all, and her lawyers explained all the fuss as paid bots, which did not earn her any more sympathy. The degree of public discontent boiled over to such an extent that a couple of weeks ago, Dolina was forced to appear on the TV program Let Them Talk and explain herself. There, she finally offered to return the money to Polina. "I don't have it now," she said, "but I will definitely return it, eventually." However, Laurier refused because the terms were vague. She would return the money, but she didn't know when and wasn't taking inflation into account. Fortunately, this story has a relatively happy ending. It seems that the authorities realized it was not worth provoking further discontent toward the elite. On December 16th, the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation issued a final ruling. The court determined that Dolina was not misinformed about the nature of the transaction. She understood she was selling real estate. Therefore, Article 178 cannot be applied, meaning the transaction is valid. The apartment belongs to Polina Laurier, and Dolina must claim the money from the scammers. She is a victim, but in another case. Justice prevailed. Immediately following this decision, courts shifted in other cases too. Not all of them, but the courts slowly began siding with the buyers and even initiated a fraud case against the grandma from Tula who shouted, "Give mine back to me too." Turned out she first informed the buyer that she had been scammed and only then withdrew the money for the apartment sale from a bank deposit box. Finally, even in this case, there is a place for conspiracy theory. Some believe this story was blown out of proportion by real estate developers. The Russian construction market is struggling, mortgage rates are close to 20% and no one is buying new apartments. People have been switching to the secondary housing market. And then this sensational story hits. Beware, on the secondary market you could lose your money and your apartment, so it's better to buy from us at triple the price. At least it's reliable. The media has been hyping up this topic for the last 3 months, and people have really become afraid to sell and buy apartments. So the theory doesn't sound entirely crazy. All in all, I can only wish Polina Laurier all the best in her new home. And honestly, pity for Larisa Dolina. People hate her, but she's just an elderly woman who lost her life savings. As for the scammers, well, it's Christmas and the New Year, so I hope they get a shovel full of shit. Thanks for watching. This is the last video of 2025, so Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of my viewers. And as always, a huge shout out to my biggest supporters: Елизавета Zakharova, Kirill Klimuk, Petr Ilich, Marina Holiday, Lyudmila Ilyanova, and one more member who wished to remain anonymous. See you guys next year.